Hi guys, it's Jodie Ellis from Unconventional X Stitch. I hope you're all having an awesome day. It's pretty warm and humid here, so bear with me, and I also have a bit of a headache happening, so my vision's a bit blurry and that's why I'm wearing these, but it's not helping me a lot. So today's focus is talking about patterns. I get a lot of questions about the layout, and I include a little fact in there, but I thought how fun would it be to give you the visual version of it. So without further ado, let's have a look at the Unconventional X Stitch patterns and how they present. So I've printed out this little one. This is my owlet witch. Super cute! My two favourite things, owls and witches. Well, I have a lot of favourite things, but this is one of them. So this is the front page, and this is what it'll look like. So you're going to get this really awesome coloured picture of what it will look like when stitched. And then also on here is your title and sorry, excuse me, your stitch count. Now what a stitch count is how many, I call them just X's. So owlet is 231 by 243. So your stitched area is 231 X's by 243 X's. So you can look at it that way, or there's also like size in measurement. So you have centimeters, and you also have inches. So we try to make sure that we have everything in metric and imperial, because not everyone's got the same. And even for my mum, she's from she's sort of from the UK and Australia. She's a bit of a mixed bag, but for her, she works in pounds and ounces still, so she's still like super, I call it old school. So I like to have everything so that everyone's covered. It's important for me for everyone to be able to understand where we're at. So you've got that. Now that's talking about your stitched area. So for example, I'll just go with the inches, and it's 12.83 by 13.5 inches. So I would then add extra length onto my fabric, because I want room in case I mess up where I'm starting, and I also want that room so that when I go to the framers I can have a border if I want, and if there is no room for border, it still gives the framer what they need to be framing it. So extra fabric is always super important, so think about how you want that to look. And then of course it's just all the copyrights and disclaimers. Now it sort of gets straight into the pattern. We don't mess around, so it sort of gets straight into it. But you'll find that all the other pieces that you need are at the back. I've just popped mine to the front for convenience sake. So you've got thread lengths. So this little chart gives you the DMC number, a description of what that color is. Now for some reason, some places have a different name for it. I don't know why, so always just go with the DMC number. That's never going to change. And then how many stitches go with that color. So for example, DMC 1 white tin has 173 stitches, so that's the full stitches. It also has a column for back stitches if there are any, and then it goes through length in meters. So white tin has 0.8 of a meter, so that's how much you'll need. Now yes, we split the thread, so your floss will have 6 threads within there, and if you're working on, for example, 18 count, you'll use 2 threads, so you need 0.8 meters, and out of that 0.8 you're going to be splitting it down all the time. So don't think of it as I can get away with divide that by well, it depends on how many you're using, so divide it by 3 because I'm using 2 threads. It doesn't work that way. You need 0.8. I hope that made sense. Maybe I should try that again. But anyway, so you need 0.8 of a meter. Now that also factors in like a 30% buffer zone, so that if you're like me and you go all over the place, it's still going to keep up with you, so you're not going to run out of floss. Now I did mention I like to do metric and imperial. but the program only allows me to put in meters at the moment. So I have an Excel sheet. Now this comes standard on the website. You'll always get that Excel sheet, but you just plug in your details. So you know, you'll put your DMC1 and then how many stitches, and then the columns I've got in that Excel sheet should convert it across to inches, and also how many skeins. So it covers all bases because not everybody works the same way. Some like to see it in full skeins, some like to see it in inches, some like to see it in meters. It all depends on the individual. But this is like your go-to. This is your little Bible for floss and how much you need. So we've got that. So that's what I would take to the shops if I was shopping to kit this little owl up. Now, this is the next one. This is what we call the key. So you'll see on it, I'm just going to hold it up here, you can't see me, but that's okay, I'm not pretty to look at anyway. So you've got the colour. So I love that little colour reference because it sort of tells me as well what shade I'm looking for. Oh, I'm looking for a blue, so that makes it a bit easy to pull out of the box. And then you've got the symbol. Now that symbol is the be all end all. That symbol is what links you to your pattern. And I'll actually show you just now how that links in. I'll just split that up. So see how that pattern has lots and lots of symbols? So that's how we're translating it. Because when you buy your fabric, it doesn't have the pattern printed on it. So you have to look at that pattern and check the symbol, and then you've got to stitch the right colour. So this is your little Bible as well. And then it's got the DMC number and the colour name. Again, I never bother with the colour name. I don't look at it at all. My DMC number is like my be all end all. That's what I use for my referencing. So you've got that, and that's for all the colours. And I keep that with me at all times when I'm stitching. Once I've done the thread lengths and made sure I've got enough, I tend to throw that in the bin. I don't need that anymore. So we've got that. And then we've got, it's actually nearly 1.5 pages, but a little page of facts as well. And then you get into the pattern. Now, some patterns have partial pages, but you can see on this one, like, because the background's not stitched, there's a lot of blanks. Now, you'll also notice, try and neaten this up a little bit, that it's got a grey, 3 grey rows and 3 grey columns. So what do they mean? They're repeats of the adjoining page. So the repeats help you make sure that you're linking the pages right when you're stitching and that everything's above board. Am I on track? Yes, I am. So you've got that. And there, you know, you've got your dark grid squares. So you've got 10 and 10 as well. So you can tell where you're at. Each square represents 1 X. Now what's this little cool thingy in the corner here? See if I can get a bit closer on it. There we go. Oh, it nearly, oh wow, it nearly focused as well. That's lovely. So this is a page map, I call it. And the little dark one, that's where this page belongs. So it's telling me that this page I'm holding right now is the very bottom right. So that really helps me know, okay, this is where I am in the pattern, so on and so forth. And there will be, because if you're not like me, because everyone stitches differently as well, and you want to find the absolute center page. I'm trying not to mix up all my pages and get myself confused. This one's not the absolute center, but oh no, look, there we go. Ha, I just found, that is like, I am absolutely winging it, like, what are the chances? So, this is my absolute center page. So you will see on each side there is a black triangle that points inward. So I would trace in on all 4 of those, and that would give me my absolute center of my pattern. Booyakasha! So, you know, so I'll talk about that too. Everybody stitches differently, and I get asked heaps and heaps, where do I start? How do I do it? What do I use? So I like to give a bit of an idea on how everybody stitches. So for myself, I would start at the top left, and I would work my way across that top row to the right, and then I would go down to the next row and go right to left and then left to right, and I just snake my, I call it snaking. I'd snake my way down all the way to the bottom until I'm done. That's how I'm comfortable working. I feel like I touch The completed stitch is a lot less that way as well, and I feel more secure, because if I start from the very middle, I'm terrified I'm going to get it that off center from my fabric that everything will go wrong and I'll have ruined the pattern. So that's my comfort zone, but other people like to start from the center. So find what works for you. I'm trying at the moment with the project I'm on, the skull one, to go top to bottom. And I don't think I'm enjoying it as much as I did left to right. And I started doing that just to try something new, but also to break up the confetti, because the top row is really confetti laden, and then as you get further down there's less and less confetti. So I was like, oh, you know, I'll give myself a break, but I think I'd rather just go hard on the confetti and, you know, go back to my original methodology. So, you know, we've got that. Now, another feature, I think that's all my pages. I think I've gone through everything, yep. Another feature of my patterns is that when you buy, you're getting multiple patterns for the one price. So I include, where fabric measurements allow, 14, 16, 18 and 22 count Aida. That's what the measurements are for. And the reason I do that is because as soon as you change your count, the stitched area will change and how much floss you need will change. And there could be nothing worse in my mind of going and buying a pattern in, say, 14 count, but you really want to do it in 22 count, and having to do all the math for it and going, okay, well, you know, how much floss do I need then for that, and how big is it going to be? So it's really about making it easy for you guys. So, you know, the easier we are, the quicker you can get into stitching, and that's what we're all about. We want you to stitch, we want you to have fun. Being bogged down with having to figure things out isn't really very fun, so we do all the hard yards for you so that you can get straight into the fun stuff. Now, Aida. You don't have to stick to Aida. You can use like linen or something else. Like it's totally up to you. We just work off Aida because that's, you know, very common. But linen's also very common as well. But you would have to probably do some mucking around in figuring it out. Because if you went with, like, say, a 32 count linen, we don't provide the counts or anything for that, so you would have to then work out how big your fabric needs to be and how much floss you need for that. So make sure that, you know, if you do decide to go down a different path, that you're able to do those calculations, but we unfortunately we just don't provide that at the moment. So yeah, you're very flexible on what you can do. And as well as that, like, you know, when we're talking about fabrics and counts and all those sorts of fun things, I mean, it does have on here that it needs to be done on white Aida. So you've got to sort of look at your pattern and decide whether, you know, okay, there's no background stitched, it's recommending white Aida, but can I go with something else like a hand-dyed fabric? So you need to have a look at what places are stitched, will it still work, because around the hat in this one we've got some like creamy and some white stitching that sort of really makes it a nice blend into the white fabric. But will that work on a dark fabric, or will that work on a brown fabric? So weigh that up onto how it's going to look at the end. But really, like, the only limitation is your imagination. We've got some customers out there who come out with these beautiful picks, like they've just got an eye for what color will go with what pattern, and they nail it every time. It's really impressive. So I always get really excited when they're starting a new unconventional project. I'm like, what fabric are you going to use? I've got to see this. I'm great at designing, but picking fabric, like, I can stress over that for hours because I suck at that. But another good way of making sure whether they go or not is to do, I call it a Fluff Toss. And you get all the flosses that will be in that pattern and you put it on the fabric, and you can look at it and go, yeah, that really suits. Or you'll look at it and go, ooh, no, definitely not. So you can do that as well. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, working on it digitally. I'm really old-fashioned. I print mine and I highlight as I go. I don't have an example with me, but I like to highlight as I go as my guide. Some people do it on iPads, tablets, all those sorts of things, but I don't actually know how they're doing it because it's not something I practice myself. I have a lot of trust issues with technology, so I tend to go old-fashioned because I'm like, at least if like my laptop or something runs out of battery, I'm not limited in that way. So I think there's less limitations maybe using a printed over digital, but I can't say emphatically because I've never done it digitally, so that's just my guess. If you do work with it digitally, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below as to your experiences with it and why you chose it, because I'm really very curious about how you do it. So you get those counts, and then there's what I call an SB, or a solid block pattern. I should have printed an example, but I've only thought about it now. But what that means is, for me, it meant all the squares were solid block. So it's coloured. So each square will have that DMC colour on it, and then the symbol will be overlaid. So I call it the speed stitcher pattern as well, because speed stitchers use it a lot because they find it helps them work faster, because they're looking and they're like, it's a green, it's this symbol, right, I know what I'm looking for, and they just translate a bit quicker that way. So we always provide that as well, because it's great to make sure that everyone's catered for. And I found too that some folks actually really need that pattern because they can't work with black and white. They can't, like, they need that color block. So it's important to me to offer that as well. So, you know, I've even had the question of, but why do you give me so much choice? Why can't you just give me one? And again, the reason is that I do give these choices because then everyone is catered for, everybody has what they need, and it just makes life a bit easier for everyone. So choice is important for us, and I'm not going to charge you extra for that choice. On that topic too, as you can see, like, I print my patterns slightly bigger than my competitors because I found going small hurts my eyes. So I'd rather print a few extra pages than be straining, or maybe even get two symbols mixed up because they're too small. But if that doesn't work for you and you want to print fewer pages, just let me know and go, hey, you know, go through the purchase and go, hey, I've bought this pattern, but I found the grid too big. Could you please make the grid smaller? Now we're like, sure, and we can shrink that right down, and I'll just flick through like just the pattern on its own without any of the details, but much smaller, so that you can print something that's smaller. And the same goes for if the grid isn't big enough for you, we can also go bigger. So don't be afraid to touch base, because we don't want you to have a poor experience. We want you to enjoy stitching, and there's nothing worse than limitations. And, you know, having been stitching for, gosh, 20 years maybe? 20 years. I'd say 15 to 20 years I've been stitching. Yeah, I was quite young. Wow! I've just had that realization. That's great. Yeah, so I was stitching before the internet was even really a big thing. So my first ever one was this cute little rose kit. And I stitched that myself, and I was so proud of myself. I didn't have any instructions. That kit didn't come with any. So I thought I'd done really well. And I went back to the grocery store. Yeah, you could buy them back then from a grocery store. And I got the frame, and I very proudly showed the checkout lady, who went, oh, you've done it wrong. And I went, what have I done wrong? And she went, oh, well, you know, all your X's have to match. And you've done some like left to right and some right to left, so they don't match. And I went, oh. And she's like, oh, and your back stitch is wrong. And I've gone, oh. I felt a bit embarrassed because I was like, oh, and a bit disheartened. But I went, okay, well, I can do this. But I decided I really enjoyed it and I wanted to do more. So I went to the cross stitch place. They did like, and I lived in a very small town. It was Karratha back in the early 2000s up in the Pilbara. So have a look on Google Maps. It's way bigger now. It's not actually a town, but a city. So it's got huge. But that's where I grew up. And I bought fabric and a paper pattern. It was like a little cardboard, and it was a dragon, and it needed black fabric, but the shop didn't have black. So I thought, well, I'll just dye that myself. I dyed it, but it came out more grey, and when I finished the dragon, realised it really should have been black because it didn't make, I don't know, I just wasn't happy with the finish, and I got a few colours wrong. So, but that was massive, absolutely massive, and it was 90 colours, but it came as a single piece of paper. Huge! I mean, I reckon, how many pages would there have been in there? I reckon 20 A4 pages, but all squeezed into the one that I had to unfold. I hated that I had to unfold it, because what am I going to do with this? And back then I was a hoop stitcher. I started off with nothing, and then I went to a hoop, and then eventually I went to a scroll frame with a lap stand. But I hated this pattern. It was just so big, and the gridding was so tiny, and the symbol guide was just so poor. Like, it was a really hard experience, so I'm surprised I continued after that, but I did. I persevered. And then I started looking for other patterns, and I couldn't find anything I wanted. So I think I was in Perth by this stage, still working on the dragon. So I'd moved to Perth for uni and decided, that's it, I want to make my own patterns. And so I did. I begged, borrowed, did whatever I could, and my dad bought me my first ever cross-stitch design program, and I made little bits and pieces and learnt lots along the way, and then it got more serious, and here I am today as a professional designer, and that's what I do for a living from home. So it's just me and my hubby. He helps out where he can when he's in town. He works away, so you know, when he's here he helps out with the business, and it's my bread and butter. Like, it's my passion, it's what I love to do, and these patterns that I design are designed with you guys in mind. Like, I make these so that you guys can have a great experience, so that they're easy to use. So I hope that this video tutorial has been helpful and that I haven't gone too quick. If you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to ask. I love chatting about it and going over it and how everything works. If you know I've missed anything, leave a comment below or get in contact with me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that and you feel plenty of confidence now in your cross-stitch journey. It can seem really daunting at first when you go from small samplers into something big like what we do here at Unconventional, but it's not. Like, once you get the hang of it, everything's a breeze. It's just that first one can be really scary because you're like, oh, I've never seen anything like this, and why are there so many pages, and why is there this? But once you get the hang of it, you're gonna love it. It's addictive, and you know, after that everything will be a breeze, and you're going to look back on it and go, I don't know what I was worried about. So, but be warned, once you go into these bigger patterns, you're never going to look back. Like, you'll look at the results and go, totally worth it. So I'm going to stop blabbing. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Any questions, again, don't hesitate to ask, and don't forget to like and follow below, and we will catch you on the flip side. Happy stitching!